Hello there, Tolkien fanatics. Welcome back to another Middle-earth strategy battle game adventure video. Today I'll be doing another how-to video on playing the game, and I'm going to be talking about the fight phase. Now I'm not going to cover everything that is in the fight phase chapter. I'm just going to go over the major points to hit. There's some things in here like defending barriers and prone models and stuff of that nature that I'm not really going to hit on big. I will talk about prone models a little bit specifically. But as it comes to like fighting over barriers, defending barriers, attacking multiple models over barriers, we're going to leave that for another section into the future. For now, I'm just specifically going to talk about how does a fight phase work. Now, there are some other things that work in the fight phase, like heroic actions that I'm also not going to discuss right now, as I plan on doing a heroic actions video. So today, like I said, I'm just going to go over how it works, kind of like I did for the shoot phase and then the movement phase before it. So, when to fight. Fights are resolved one at a time. That's the most important part. Priority player always picks the fights that they want to resolve first. They get to pick the order. So if you have fights sprawled across the board that you're playing on, the priority player gets to decide which ones he wants. Now, a lot of times people keep it pretty simple, and they'll usually move like from right to left across a board, picking and choosing where they want in each section, because it does make a difference sometimes. As the priority player, you have the ability to pick a fight so that you can untrap your model or untrap another model, or pick a fight that your opponent is trapped in, so if you win it, you can double your strikes there. We'll talk about trap models here in a little bit, but I just want to talk about how that is important as a priority player. So that's where that priority roll, way back at the beginning of the the turn, and one of the first videos I talked about, is very important. So let's see. Even if some things like heroic actions can usurp the order of operations, like I said, priority player gets to pick the order of fights, but there are heroic actions that will demand that they become first. One of the examples of this is a heroic combat that actually usurps the natural chain of events and will be one of the first combats to be resolved. So, when does a model fight? Well, a model fights if it's in base contact with one or more enemy models. So, pretty simple. Your model is in base contact with your enemy model. Guess what? They're going to fight. So, how do you fight? Well, that's simple. The first thing you have to look at is your attack characteristics. How many attacks does your model have? All right. And then from there, you have to look at modifiers. Some things that are modifiers, for example, are if you're in base contact with an enemy and you're a cavalry model and you charge them, well, you get that +1 modifier to your attack because charging cav models get an extra attack. Okay? Some other modifiers to look at, for example, could be supports. If you have supporting models with spears or pikes, they get to also lend their attack and also their fight value to a combat. So if you have, for example, an Uruk-hai warrior fighting against a warrior of Rohan, well, both of those models have one attack in their profiles. And if you're curious where to find that, please go and refer to my How to Understand a Profile video that I did a few days ago. That will help show you exactly where to figure this out. But for this example, a standard warrior of Rohan and a standard Uruk-hai warrior both have one attack. Now, the Uruk-hai warrior is being supported by 2 pikemen, which is allowed to do, 2 Uruk-hai warriors with pikes. Well, each one of those can lend a single attack to the initial Uruk-hai warrior that is in combat. So, in essence, it ends up becoming a 3-on-1. So, that is another modifier that you can use to help boost your attacks. This game is all about how many dice can you get into a fight. There are a lot of models out there that do have multiple attacks in their profiles. Just to list a few: Corsair Reavers, Dwarven Iron Guard, Uruk-hai Berserkers, Pharaoh Uruk-hai, and if you give one model, it's a I talked about these guys the other day. I can't remember their names now. Watcher Karna, there we go. Watcher Karna with the Twin Blades upgrade has 2 attacks as well. So there's just 4 or 5 guys that have multiple attacks in their characteristics. From the warrior standpoint, a lot of heroes have multiple attacks. I mean, Imrahil, Aragorn, Boromir, King Elisar, Aragorn, who else? Faramir, Theoden. I think I said Éomer, but I can't remember. Éomer, even Éowyn. They all have multiple attacks in their profile. So how do you resolve a fight? Well, this is a simple 4-step process, and we'll go through it and talk about things that come up throughout those 4 steps, and then also things that you have to do in order to finish those 4 steps. So resolving a fight is simple. Step 1, duel roll. Players roll a number of dice equal to the number of attacks to see who wins. Step 2, lose your backs away. Losing model must back away 1 inch. Okay. Now the key to this is you don't have to back away directly. You just have to back away 1 inch. You can move sideways. You can move diagonally. You can move away any direction you want as long as you can move a full inch. Now obviously you can't move through your enemy, so you are limited in that space. But you basically have about 180-degree range of movement you can make from your opponent in order to back away. As long as you can back away 1 inch, you're good. All right. Step 3, winners make strike. Whoever won the duel roll now rolls with their number of attacks to deal wounds to the enemy. Okay? And that's going back to your attack statistic. I'm sorry, not your attack, your strength statistic in your profile, comparing it to your opponent's defense statistic, consulting the wounds chart, and figuring out what you need to wound, and then rolling the dice. If the proper number is rolled, congratulations, you have dealt a wound. If that one wound reduces the enemy model to 0 standing wounds, then they are killed. To put it bluntly, they're killed. Which is step 4, remove casualties. Any models slain by the winner's attacks are removed from play as casualties. So there you go. Those are the 4 steps. Now, the duel roll. There are several order of operations that you have to follow in order to get a successful duel roll, because there are many modifiers. So we'll go through this and so you can figure out, you can have a good idea of exactly what you need to do. So to resolve a fight, here are the steps in the order that is required. So gather the number of dice you need for the duel roll. Use different colored dice for each model with modifiers or might points available. So for example, if you have, let's say, a warrior Minas Tirith being supported by a guard of the Fountain Court. Well, both of them have the same strength value. Both of them have the same number of attacks. So if they're fighting against a model that is, we'll say, defense 6, you could roll both of them with the same colored dice. We'll say blue. So you've got 2 models with blue dice. That doesn't matter because they're both strength 3 and they both have 1 attack. And they also, neither of them have might. So it's not, you're not going to be in a situation where you need to know exactly whose points they are. Or, sorry, whose dice it is that you've rolled. Now, let's throw a monkey wrench in there. So you say, I'll still have that same warrior Minas Tirith and that same guard of the Fountain Court. Now you get Boromir in there. Well, Boromir has 3 attacks. So his 3 attacks need to be separate colored dice. Why? Because he has a greater strength. He has a strength of 4. So going against a defense 6 model, as I said earlier, he would actually need to be wounding on 5s, which would make a difference when rolling your dice. So if you were to just throw 5 total blue dice, because remember our warrior Minas Tirith and our guard of the Fountain Court are using blue dice, and you roll a 5, okay, how do you know whose 5 is it? Is it the warrior Minas Tirith? Is it the guard of the Fountain Court? Is it Boromir's? Because Boromir will wound on a 5, where the other 2 will wound on a 6. Strength 3 against defensive 6 is a 6 to wound. So you're not sure who actually got the 5. It could have been Boromir. It could have been the warrior Minas Tirith. It could have been the guard of the Fountain Court. In which case, if it's one of those latter 2, you don't wound. So it is important to make sure you use different colored dice. The other reason why is not only is his strength characteristic higher, Boromir's that is, he also has might points he can use to affect his dual roll and to wound roll. So if you are going up against one warrior and you roll your 5 dice and you roll a 3 high, and this is not a joke because this happens to me all the time, and your opponent rolls 1 dice and gets a 4, well, if one of your dice was a 3, and it was Boromir's dice that rolled the 3, you can use his point of might to make it a 4, and then therefore win based off your fight value. We're going to assume that you're going against, say, a Mordor Orc, which is only a fight value of 3, and with Boromir's fight value of 6, you easily trump it and win. Okay? So that's why it's important to make sure you keep different colored dice. Same thing can be said for those who are doing special strikes. If you're doing a feint or a piercing strike with a model, even if they have the same strength statistic as another model that they're fighting with, since you're doing that special strike, you do need to roll a different colored dice, because when it comes to wounding, the result can be different. Also, when it comes to the dual roll, if you're using a 2-handed weapon, you will be taking a -1 modifier. So that's why it says it is important to use different colored dice if you're doing if you have models that are doing something with a specific modifier or might points available. The second step after gathering your dice is declaring the special strikes or 2-handed attacks. So there you go. That's why you need different colored dice. The next is to roll your dice, all of them at once. Apply any modifiers to the dice rolls. Modifiers being -1 for going 2-handed. Then use any rerolls, and these can be banners, special effects, or other things. A banner, for example, could be just a simple banner. A warrior minister nearby with a banner could help out Boromir and his own fellow warrior minister and guard the Fountain Court. Special rules: Imrahil allows all fiefdoms models to re-roll within 12 inches around him, due not only to his special rule, but also the army bonus special rule. Okay? Use might. So you've used your special rules and your banners, and you still have failed. Now you must use Boromir's ability to spend might or any other hero to up your dice if necessary. Winner makes strikes. There you go. That's how you resolve it. Gather your dice, make sure you have separate colors, declare your special strikes, roll your dice, apply your modifiers, use any rerolls, use might, and then your winner makes strikes. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward, and that goes all the way back to what we said, where the 4 steps are: dual roll, loser backs away, winner makes strikes, and removes casualties. So very quick, very simple, very straightforward. We'll talk about a few other things real quick, and then that'll be it for this video. So drawn combats. In a situation where you have a one-on-one fight, we'll go back to that warrior of Rohan and that Isengard warrior, or Urkai warrior I was speaking of earlier. So both of them roll a single attack, a single dice, because they both have one attack, and you get a 4 and a 4 each. Okay, there's no banners around to modify any dice, and since neither of them have any might, the 4s stand. Well, in this situation, it comes down to a fight value. Well, the Urkai warrior's fight value is 4. The warrior of Rohan's fight value is 3. So therefore, the warrior, good lord, the Urkai warrior wins via fight. Now, if their fight value were to be drawn, let's go back to our warrior minister fighting a warrior mortal orc. So a warrior minister against a mortal orc, a one-on-one, they both roll a 4. This becomes a draw in combat due to the fact that they're both fight 3. So how do you determine who wins? Roll a d6. On a 1 through 3, it goes to the evil player. On a 4 through 6, it goes to the good player. All right? Now, there are many situations, and this is actually very common, because I think good armies prevail over evil when it comes to match play, tournament play, and other play, just casual pickup games. If both players are good or both players are evil, then I would recommend that you decide either at the beginning of a game or have some sort of house rule that determines who is good, who is evil for roll-offs. For example, our house rule is priority player takes it high. So if myself and my wife, Tracy, are playing, and we're both playing good armies, and I have the priority, and we have a drawn combat, we roll the d6. If it's a 4 through 6, then I would take it as I am the priority player. If she was the priority player, she would take it through on a 4 through 6. So that's just a simple example of a house rule that you can use for that. Okay? Multiple attacks, that's something that's easily covered. I already talked about it. Consult your attacks characteristics. If you have more than 1 under your attack, then you get more than 1. Simple example, Aemir has 3 attacks, so if he's fighting a Urkai warrior, he'll be rolling 3 dice to the 1 dice of the Urkai warrior. Okay? Backing away, I already spoke about that. You simply need to be able to move a full inch in order to back away. If you cannot, you are considered trapped. Now, this can be a situation where you have multiple enemies. It takes a minimum of 3 enemies to trap a model in, we'll say, an open field. Okay, so there's no terrain in the way or anything like that. If you have 1 model, it takes a minimum of 3 opponents to trap you, and that's just setting yourself up around so that the model cannot move away. Because when you're backing away, you cannot back through or move another model's base. So that is important. Okay, so if you can trap the model, go for it, because doing so allows you to double your strikes. Right? If you have 1 base attack, you double it to 2. If you have 2 base attacks, it doubles to 4. If you have 3 base attacks, it doubles to 6. Now, the key to this is that each individual strike doubles. So it's not, oh, hey, now all of a second I have 6 attacks, let me roll each of them one at a time. No, each strike is doubled. So when you roll them, you can roll all your strikes one at a time if you're trying to delineate against multiple models. But it would be rolled 2. So say you are Aragorn, you're fighting against 3 models, okay? You charged in. Now, charging in with cavalry is another way to get traps, because if you win, you knock your opponent prone. If you're prone and lose a fight, you are considered trapped. If you're prone and win a fight, your opponent backs away and you stand up. So that is a good way to win. Well, that's a good way to get yourself unprone, is to win a fight. And there are ways to help make it more possible to win when you're prone. Some of the modifiers, like having a shield in your war gear, can allow you to shield and help you get up. But we will talk about that specifically in another video. For now, if you're trapped, If you're prone, you are trapped. So going back to my example, Aragorn on a horse charges in against 3 warriors, knocks them all prone. He still has his 3 individual strikes, and they are doubled. So he wants to roll 1 strike against each of the 3 guys. Well, each strike is double. So he rolls 2 against the first one. That's his first strike. 2 against the second one. That's his second strike. 2 against the third one. That's his third strike, okay? He still has his 3 strikes. It's just that they're doubled for being prone. It's not like, oh, I'll roll 1 at a time to see if I can kill him. That's not how that works. Each individual strike is just doubled, okay? So other than that, that pretty much covers everything. Let's go over a couple more things real quick. Make way is important. Making way, if you're in a position where you're supporting a model, so back to my example where I was talking about before about having a guard of Fountain Court supporting a warrior in Minas Tirith. Say for some reason they lose to that mortal orc they're fighting, the guard of the Fountain Court with the spear can move away 1 inch in order to allow the warrior Minas Tirith to back away 1 inch. Now, you can only move 1 model. So the situation earlier where the Uruk-hai warrior was fighting with 2 pikes, and then he was fighting against 1 warrior of Rohan, if they were to lose that, then you could only move 1 pike. You can't move the second one back. You can only move 1. So it's important to figure out when you're playing with pikes where and how you want to set up your what's called a pike block. Because it's awesome being able to do 2 pikes to get through, because you can support with 2 pikes, 2 pikes deep in order to give 3 attacks. But if you lose, only 1 pike is going to be able to make way. And if you have them 2 deep, you're standing in a simple I formation. The back pike is going to block the front pike from being able to make way. So a lot of times you'll see people kind of stagger their pipes. Their pikes, not pipes. Sorry. They'll still be in base contact, allowing you to move the middle guy away to allow the front base-to-base contact warrior to back away in that situation. And that's something I do when I play in fiefdoms, and I'll put my pikes in an L, because the rule is simply that you have to have them in base contact. They don't have to be straight on base contact. So I'll put them in a little L formation on the ends of my line, allowing me to move that first pike back to untrap my model. So that is important to know. You can make way, they can move 1 inch, and it can only be 1 model. Okay? So other than that, the last thing really is just, I already kind of touched on this, multiple combats. You can, like I talked earlier with Aragorn making strikes, you can make strikes against any model you want, but you do need to delineate. So if your Aragorn's fighting those same 3 models, if you want to roll them all at once, that's cool, but you don't really know who they went against. So you can't really determine how they struck, because again, each individual strike is doubled, like I was saying. So this is where it's important to delineate strikes. So if you want to put multiple strikes on a model, that's fine, but you have to roll those strikes individually. Now there are some situations, for example, where it's not really going to matter. Say Aragorn doesn't get that knockdown, so he's just rolling 3 straight strikes against orcs, and he needs a 4. So if you're just like, I'm going to strike these guys, and then you can just do a prioritize. I'll prioritize 1, 2, 3 against these 3 orcs in whatever order. As long as your opponent's okay with that, you can roll them all at once. That does help speed the game up a little bit. Just make sure you speak to your opponent, be very clear with what you're doing. Some people don't want you to do that. I'm pretty okay with it myself. Again, it's just going to depend on the situation you're in. If I'm playing where your strikes are doubled and you want to do that, I'm going to tell you no, because you need to roll your doubled strikes against each model individually you're trying to strike. Because again, you throw all 6, you don't know, and you get 3 6s, you don't know which strike did that. You could have thrown 2 6s on your first strike, which was doubled. You could have thrown 1 6 on your second strike, and your third strike could have gotten 0 6s, which means in that case, the third strike would have failed to wound depending on whatever the model was. We're just going to use in this situation, you need a 6 to wound. Okay? So situations like that is where it's very important to have your double strikes delineated and rolling them individually. So other than that, that is the combat phase. Like I said, I'm not going to go into defended positions and fighting over barriers and stuff like that for now. I'm just going to cover exactly how a fight phase works, and I think I did that pretty thoroughly here. If you have any other questions, please leave them in the comment section below, and stay tuned for another future video. That's basically all the turns or all the phases in a turn. The next phase was the end phase, And I really don't think we need to worry about discussing that one. I covered that when I was talking about the different phases earlier. So I'm not really going to cover that one now. It's just basically seeing who's left and if you're broken and having to figure out courage tests for the future. So after basically the end phase, you go back and start the turn sequence all over again with priority, then movement, then shooting, then fight, then end phase, and it just keeps circling around until the game ends. So next time I'll start maybe talking about war gear or heroic actions. You guys decide. Leave a comment below what you'd like to see, and I'll go ahead and help you out and give you what you were looking for. Otherwise, thanks for watching. Stay tuned for another Tolkien Fanatic video in the future. Take care.